Right now, we are in June. Normally at this stage, the NBA finals are going on and we're getting ready for the draft. This is normally some of the most interesting time in basketball. Obviously, free agency at the start of July is huge as well. And the months of June and July are two of probably the biggest months in terms of relevancy, people looking at news. However, this season, things are a little bit different. Obviously, the NBA season's been suspended, but it's looking like it's going to finish in some way. So it will be interesting to see what happens then. But one thing that is not going to happen this month anyway is the NBA draft. So in this video, we are going to be talking about 10 of the worst draft picks of the last decade. Leave in the comments if you guys want me to talk about the top 10 draft steals of the last decade, or just top 10 draft picks in general of the last decade. But anyway, now we are going to get onto it. At number 10, we've got one that time will tell if this ends up being a bad pick. It's looking like it right now. And it's the number 2 pick in the 2018 NBA draft, Marvin Bagley. So Marvin Bagley, honestly, has only been 2 seasons in the NBA, and he's been solid. However, the picks after him, next 3, were Luka Doncic, who I have no question about it, Luka Doncic is going to be a better NBA player than Marvin Bagley, Jaren Jackson Jr., and Trae Young. And honestly, the reason why this is going to make the top 10 and why it is such a ridiculous draft pick is the reason why Sacramento passed up on Luka Doncic. The fact that Luka Doncic's dad and Vlade Divac used to play against each other, and his dad put on a lot of weight, and people thought that he thought that Luka Doncic was going to do it. So for that reason alone, Marvin Bagley is going to be on this list somewhere. At number 9, we have got Jahlil Okafor. In a different era, in a back-to-the-basket post-up era, Jahlil Okafor could have been an all-star. Jahlil was the best player in high school and then led Duke to a national championship. The fact that he dropped to number 3 was kind of a surprise in the 2015 NBA draft. However, looking back at the 2015 season when the Warriors first won their NBA championship, the game was changing, and clearly Philadelphia didn't see it. So the Sixers were in the middle of their process, their rebuilding, and honestly, the fact that one pick after him was Kristaps Porzingis, who would have been a perfect player for their rebuild. Not only that, Justice Winslow was on the board as well, who could have been solid. I'm not going to talk about Devin Booker because hindsight's 2020. He was picked almost outside the lottery, so I'm not going to say something crazy like Devin Booker should have been picked number 3. But the fact that in most mock drafts they had Porzingis and Winslow at 4 and 5, and the fact that those 2 guys were there and they took Jahlil Okafor isn't necessarily a sign that they didn't know what they were doing. It's a sign that they were still living in the past. However, in a different era, Jahlil Okafor could have honestly been an Al Jefferson type player. Even if he was drafted 3 years earlier, he could have made a solid NBA career. But it has to be seen as a terrible pick, considering the fact that, again, it was one before Kristaps Porzingis, especially since Porzingis would have been a perfect fit alongside Joel Embiid on those Sixers teams. Then at number 8, we have got Josh Jackson, the number 4 pick in the 2017 NBA draft. Surprisingly enough, most people thought that Josh Jackson was going to go number 3 in the draft that year until the Boston Celtics traded down. Josh Jackson didn't work out with the Boston Celtics due to the fact that he knew he wasn't getting drafted number 1, and obviously the Celtics liked Tatum a little bit more. However, a lot of people thought that Josh Jackson was a steal for the Phoenix Suns. A lot of people thought that it was going to be a great pick. He was a high motor guy, a guy that could play both ends of the floor. However, it just hasn't been the case. He started off this season playing in the G League, and he was traded in his 2nd season. One pick after him was De'Aaron Fox. The next pick, Jonathan Isaac, who while obviously hasn't been exceptional, has shown flashes of brilliance and has shown great potential, and then Larry Markkinen taken straight after him. Any of these guys taking the next 3 picks would have been significantly better for that Phoenix Suns team than Josh Jackson, who's currently not even playing for them. At number 7, I'm going to say this right now. If you guys look at one of my other channels, I was wrong about this guy right here. It was Dragan Bender, the number 4 pick in the 2016 NBA draft. So another bad pick by the Phoenix Suns. Not only that, they took Marquise Chris with their 8th pick in the draft that year. So 3 bad picks in 2 years from the Phoenix Suns drafting forwards was not great. But Dragan Bender only played 3 seasons and is currently he's currently on a 10-day contract with the Golden State Warriors. Honestly, he doesn't seem to have much longer in the NBA. But Dragan Bender was taken that high due to the fact that he was a mobile 7-footer who looked like he could do a little bit of everything. If you watch this guy work out, his jump shot looked smooth, he moved fluidly, and especially with the success of Kristaps Porzingis the season before, he looked like he was going to be that next great European big man. However, it just didn't pan out for him. Bender couldn't really play in the post, he also wasn't quick enough to be a guard, and while, yeah, he's shown flashes of brilliance, has not shown any sort of consistency, and realistically will be out of the NBA quite soon. However, he is only 22 years old, so you just never know. His career is not necessarily over just yet. At number 6, we are going to go with Thomas Robinson, the number 5 pick in the 2012 NBA draft. In the 2012 draft, there was obviously Anthony Davis going number 1. But after that, the next quote-unquote sure thing was Thomas Robinson. Everyone thought that this guy was going to be a solid player. Everyone thought he was going to be a great rebounder at the NBA level, an overall great power forward. However, even before 2015, when the center position that couldn't shoot kind of became eradicated, the offensive center, the rebounding, non-shooting power forward was done by 2012. Thomas Robinson came into an NBA where he just honestly didn't suit it. Also, never averaging 6 points per game in his 5 years in the league was not great. One pick later was Dame Lillard, who I understand not drafting Lillard because the year before they took Jimmer as well as taking Isaiah Thomas. And then one after that was Harrison Barnes. So if they really wanted a wing or a guy who could play the 4 possibly at a better level, Harrison Barnes could have been taken. They wanted a big. Andre Drummond was significantly better, but obviously they had DeMarcus Cousins there. There are so many better picks than Thomas Robinson, who ended up just being a disaster. At number 5, we have got the number 4 pick in 2010, Wesley Johnson. So a lot of people talk, when they talk about the worst picks of the 2010 NBA draft, they talk about number 2 pick Evan Turner. However, Evan Turner was an almost max contract guy in 2016, had a couple of great seasons in the NBA. Well, solid seasons in the NBA. But the next 2 picks in that draft were Enes Kanter, who's been solid, and Wesley Johnson, who at no stage in his NBA career averaged more than 9 points per game. His best 2 seasons, the only seasons where he averaged more than 8 points per game, were when the Lakers were running with the meme lineup, the Robert Sacre, Jeremy Lin, Ryan Kelly Lakers. Do you remember that team? The meme picture where it's like them versus the Knicks. You know, like if you sat through this team, you sat through this game, you're a real fan. That was the team where Wesley Johnson averages most points, and he still couldn't average more than 10 points per game on that team. A career 33% three-point shooter and 40% shooter from the field. Wesley Johnson was taken with the 4th pick in the 2010 draft by the Minnesota Timberwolves. And it's not even the fact that he was taken there. There's been busts. The Timberwolves drafted terribly. It's that the pick after them was DeMarcus Cousins. And I know you might argue, why would they have taken a center if they had Al Jefferson? They traded Al Jefferson straight away after this draft and signed Darko Milicic to a big contract. Not only that, Wesley Johnson played the small forward position. And they also went out and got Michael Beasley, who ended up playing the small forward position. So they ended up drafting a guy to play him out of position and barely start him, whereas they could have just fixed up their center position or not trade away Al Jefferson. A really just dumb summer of 2010 by the Minnesota Timberwolves. So yeah, that's for that reason they have to be on this list. At number 4, we have got Derrick Williams, the Minnesota Timberwolves pick the next year. Again, one of the sure things in the 2011 NBA draft, apparently. A lot of people thought he was better than Kyrie, but it just never panned out for Derrick Williams. He couldn't play the 3 well, he couldn't play at the 4, he couldn't score, he couldn't do anything at the NBA level. And in his 7-year career, played for 6 different franchises. And it's really hard to pinpoint why he was so bad. It was just, every scout was wrong. And it wasn't necessarily just Minnesota, because there was no question about it that he was going to be picked there. But at the same time, they missed out on guys like Kawhi, Klay Thompson, who, imagine if you put in a 3-and-D wing into those Minnesota Timberwolves teams with Ricky Rubio and Kevin Love. While those teams wouldn't have been great, they probably still would have been playoff teams or pushing for the playoffs. So yeah, that Derrick Williams pick, definitely not great. On number 3, we have got a pick that, again, hindsight is 2020. Is the number 2 pick in the 2012 NBA draft, Michael Kidd Gilchrist. So Alongside Thomas Robinson from that draft, he was taken number 2 after his college teammate Anthony Davis when they won the national championship. The year before that, the Charlotte Bobcats at the time ended up having the worst record in NBA history in the lockout year and didn't even end up with the number 1 overall pick. So instead of getting Anthony Davis, they drafted Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. And while he's been a solid player, that's all I'm going to say, solid player, Bradley Beal was 1 pick below. And also, if you guys don't know, the Oklahoma City Thunder offered Charlotte Bobcats James Harden for this pick, and they turned it down because the Thunder wanted to draft Bradley Beal, and they offered James Harden for the pick used on Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, and they turned it down. While yeah, a terrible draft pick, especially one before Beal, the fact that they could have had James Harden instead of this pick just shows that Max Kellerman's right. Michael Jordan is the Michael Jordan of bad GMs. And number 2 is Markelle Fultz, who was a number 1 overall pick in the 2017 NBA draft. And this was something that honestly was just the most confusing thing ever. No one knew what was wrong with Fultz. He played solid, looked solid at the start of Summer League, and then he seemed to forget how to play basketball. Will Fultz ever have a major resurgence? I don't know. He never was going to in Philadelphia. Played quite well for Orlando this year, though. I will give credit where credit's due there. Fultz has seemed to pick it up a little bit. Will he ever be the number 1 potential player that we saw back then? Probably not. And the crazy thing is that at the time, there was no question about it. Markelle Fultz was going number 1 in that draft. In a draft that, looking back on it, will end up being a completely stacked 2017 NBA draft. And I don't know if it's a mental problem. I don't know if it's an injury problem, but there's no question about it. Markelle Fultz is one of the worst picks ever, to be honest. And number 1, this is just the most obvious choice ever. It's Anthony Bennett. And Anthony Bennett is the worst number 1 pick in NBA history, without question. The 2013 NBA draft was a weird one. It was seen as one of the worst drafts in history, but looking back on it, there were a lot of good players in the draft. Obviously, there was Giannis, but no one's going to make the argument that Giannis should have been number 1. It was a draft where a lot of kind of unheralded players were good. Like CJ McCollum, who was taken in the top 10, people didn't realize why. People didn't know why at the time, has been a really solid player. Gobert, who was taken at the end of the first round. Steven Adams, who was taken at the end of the lottery. And at the same time, the Cleveland Cavaliers were really needing a wing. They already drafted Tristan Thompson 2 years before, so they had their power forward position sorted. They were using Anderson Varejao. They weren't planning on playing Thompson at the 5, so they already had their power forward, so they needed a small forward. And the number 3 pick was Otto Porter. If they wanted a wing, Otto Porter was there for them. It was looking like they were going to take a Nerlens Noel or Alex Len, who in hindsight wouldn't have been nearly as bad. But the reason why I'm putting this pick at number 1, even though obviously there were some bigger quote-unquote draft busts because of people taken right after, was the fact that Anthony Bennett was expected to be the 8th or 9th pick in the draft, and only on draft day, like nobody, not one mock draft had Anthony Bennett going number 1. Most of them didn't have him going top 5, and for some reason, the Cleveland, rather than even trading down to number 9 to get him there, where they probably could have, they decided to draft out of shape Anthony Bennett number 1, who couldn't even get off the bench in Turkey. So anyway, yeah, that is the video. This is our first video back on this channel. Thank you guys for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe.